Hey guys, once again, it is the Crossover Podcast coming to you live from our various locations in the tri state area. Not as live as it was last week, but we thank you guys for tuning in. Oops, my bad. Echo, man. It always happens at least once a show. Wouldn't be a podcast if that didn't happen. Right now, I'm rocking out with Trey. Hopefully, Matt will come in and we'll have our special guest, Jeff, come in too. But go ahead and introduce yourself, Trey.
Uh, it's good to be back. Last week we had a good podcast last week. Um, we were able to kind of fire back at each other a little bit more just because we were in the same space. Um, but I think we're gonna have a good podcast tonight. Hopefully we can get Jeff in here. Jeff always has good insight on sports and our usual political hot take topics.
Yeah, so as Trey alluded to, got some good topics here. Uh, so let's start it as we always start with our crossover hot takes. And continuing the trend, we'll start off the hot take with sports before we get into other things. So Trey, based on, and I wish Matt was here because this is also a little bit of his topic. This goes over into his favorite sport. So basically, before I ask the question, just to give all of you some background, just in case you've been under a rock this week. Adam Jones, he is an African American outfielder for the Baltimore Orioles. He said he experienced, I think it was, and Trey can correct me if I'm wrong, on Monday night or Tuesday night, he said that somebody in the Boston crowd, and they were playing in Boston, Massachusetts. So, this isn't a surprise to a lot of our viewers that are like young or older who know a little bit about the history of Boston. But he said that somebody in the stadium called him the N word a couple of times. He said he was very upset about that, and to Major League Baseball into the Boston Red Sox is his favor. They condemned it, said anybody that said racial slurs would be thrown out of the game and banned from the stadium and everything. So to their credit, they did do that. So this is before I say this question to anybody that listens from Boston, this is not a shot at y'all, but just so you know. So Trey, is Boston the most racist sports town ever? You can go ahead and take off.
I don't know if we could say it's the most racist sports town ever. I do think, in its history, Boston has gotten that reputation. And this, I mean, the what Adam Jones was bringing up is not new. You always hear that type of thing from about Boston sports. And I've never been to Boston myself, but I do have a few friends who live in Boston. One of them goes to Boston University, and I had a conversation with him about the type of people that are there, and Boston gets this reputation for having people. In general, the northern people get this reputation for being like cold-hearted, like just mean people, and in particular, Boston has that reputation. And based on what I heard from my friend who goes to Boston University and gets around, as much as he can outside of campus, he said that is partially true and partially untrue. Now, in terms of racism, I cannot speak on that necessarily, but I can't imagine that at a sporting event that some player on the court or on the field would get called some sort of racial slur. And I don't believe that Adam Jones was lying. I mean, I think that that's something that happens. I imagine that it happens in Boston. I imagine that it does happen in Philly. I imagine that it happens across the nation. At different sports venues. Just because either the person legitimately feels that way about whoever they're speaking of, or they feel that they they can say it and nobody's going to know who they are because nobody saw them say it or nobody necessarily heard them say it. Um, we saw this. You see this a lot of times. This happens in soccer, in particular. Um, we heard. I don't know if you know about Mario Balotelli, but he had this situation where I think people threw a banana at him and were making monkey noises, and he repeatedly has gotten racial slurs thrown at him. So I think just in terms of sports culture, as a professional athlete, people are gonna not like you just because of who you are, or maybe because of the color of your skin. So that those type of things will be thrown. I don't know if we can necessarily say that Boston in particular is the most. We can single them out and say that they're the most racist sports town ever. Maybe they have a culture of racism at certain sports events. I don't know if we can single them out and say that they're the most racist.
All right. Well, Jeff's here. Welcome, Jeff. Before you go, I just want you to know that we're talking about the Adam Jones incident. And so the question on the floor is Boston, and maybe I'll amend it to just say, do these types of events where, so basically the question is Boston the most racist sports town? Maybe I'll just amend it to say in America. Maybe that'll be better. Go ahead, Jeff.
Okay. Can you hear me good?
You're good, Jeff.
Yep, you're good.
Okay. All right, good. So I think the situation with Adam Jones arises out of a couple of things. Sports in general is racist. Professional sports has, as the black athlete and the prevalence of the black athlete has risen due to a variety of circumstances, being the pursuit of opportunity by those in a lower economic urban setting, the availability of the sport, basketball in particular, the nature of the sport being all you really need is a ball. You can go out and play it. Which makes it ideal for those in a lower socioeconomic, situation. That tends to increase the prevalence as the black athlete has become, more prevalent in professional sports. Consumption of blackness, increases. And one could argue that black life has all black. When I say black life, I don't mean lives, me living. Black culture, things that we do, the energies that we create. It's always seen as consumption, something to be consumed by dominant culture. One can go back to slavery. Black life was seen as a commodity. There's eerie similarities between a slave auction and the NFL or NBA combine. You're measured on your physical prowess. So there are several racist undertones in professional sports, specifically because, like I said, as the black athlete, the presence of the black athlete has become more prevalent. You see these things more and more often. We saw it with Jackie Robinson. We saw with Serena Williams. We saw with Tiger Woods. So this is nothing new in sports. It's nothing new in sports. It's always been there. And unfortunately, for the foreseeable future, racism is now seemingly acceptable. It's kind of like open racism in a colorblind society. Oh, I'm not racist, but I'll call you the N-word to take you off your game. Oh, I'm just taking him off of his game. I'm not racist. Right, I'm just throwing peanuts and banana peels because I want my team to win. I'm not racist. I have black friends. Which is definitely, as we know, wrong. So, yes, racism exists in sports to a high degree. That's the first part of my answer. Second part of my answer is understanding Boston as a city and the very racist history that Boston has. Boston itself, even though it is miles and miles above the Mason-Dixon line, although it is, kind of in the heart of the Northeast, the New Englander, Boston is one of the most racist cities in the North. You could draw similarities to Philadelphia in the Rizzo time frame, and we know, the history of Philadelphia. Frank Rizzo was no friend to black people. So Boston has a very, very long-standing history of racism against black people, whether it be through busing programs and efforts to integrate schools. They were one of the most. Then there's videos online. You could go and Google Boston integration of schools, and you'll see these New Englanders with their hard Boston accents and using the N-word repeatedly. So, what we're seeing here with this Adam Jones situation is a clash of the two things. The very racist, narrative in sports itself, where black life is devalued. He's just a player. Take your paycheck and shut up, player. How dare you kneel for our national anthem, player? Just take your money and do what I want you to do. I pay your salary because I buy tickets to the game to watch you. So how dare you speak up against anything that I disagree with? And it clashes with the historical context of a very racist city. To Trey's point, it's hard to. It will be hard to argue if it's the most racist city ever, or currently, specifically when you have college towns, in historically extremely racist cities south of the Mason-Dixon. Your Alabamas, your Ole Miss, the SEC, where basically 90% of the players are black, but 90% of the people watching and cheering are white. So, it's I would not argue that they are the most racist, But I would definitely examine the truth of history, and if it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, more than likely it's a duck. So just to wrap this up, can't say it's the most, but certainly it is racist. Would it be racist without sports? Sure enough. Does it show its racism with its sports figures? Sure enough. I would probably say that the black players that play for Boston athletic teams get a pass. Probably get a pass because Boston has historically had good teams, but it would be very interesting to see if the Celtics didn't have their iconic black sports figures who brought them dynasties of championships, if indeed they would embrace their own black players, or would their own black players face the vile epithets like the opposing players currently do and have had to suffer throughout history. That's my 2 cents on it.
All right. Thank you, Jeff. I think what I'll say is this: like, while it is not, I agree with both Jeff and Trey that it is not the most racist city. It sure comes close. I'll say this, right? A lot of these days, when you talk to players, and some players have come out, like Draymond Green, like LeBron James, like Stephen Curry, and have said that, LeBron says that usually when he plays in Boston, he has tunnel vision. So even if somebody is calling him the N-word, he really doesn't hear it because, as we all know, LeBron is of one singular mind when he's on the basketball court, which is to put the ball in the hoop, right? So, so what I'll say is this, right? Boston may not be the most racist city in the country, and probably not even the most racist we could probably say it's the most racist in the Northeast/East Coast, but I won't give it that because I have friends I think we all have friends that live in the Massachusetts, Boston area. So I'll just say that it is one of, right? And we know the city of Boston with its Irish history and all the other stuff that happened. So I'll start my soliloquy by saying this. I once asked my father, right? I was looking. This is back when I was looking at schools in the Massachusetts area, just because I was all like, why not, right? And I had asked my dad. Now he's been to Boston. I've never been to Boston, and so I asked him, what's Boston like? And he said, this is no lie. He said that Boston is one of the most racist places that he has ever been to. I have never been to Boston, right? I have a lot of friends in Boston who will probably tell me the exact opposite, and their experience, it is, like Trey said, it is vastly over exaggerated. And that's probably true. A lot of stuff is over exaggerated. But what they probably won't say is that it does not happen, right? And so, you always have bad eggs in whatever, whether it's sports, whether it's cities, whether it's anything else, right? And unfortunately, in this case, a bad egg or a couple of bad eggs, because Adam Jones never said, he just said he was called the word. He never said how many times he was called the word during the game, right? And so this speaks to a larger problem in sports, which is that a lot of times, and I've seen this, I've gone to games, I've been a part of it. As fans, we have a very verbally abusive culture. And I know this is rich coming from somebody from Philly, where we booed Santa Claus, we cheered somebody after breaking their neck and everything else. And I know, we have a reputation as well. But in this case, some things happen just way too much. And Boston is a place where you hear a lot of athletes say this. And to Jeff's point, as far as Boston athletes, Boston has had one of the most prolific black athletes to ever step foot on their franchise, that being Bill Russell, right? And it's interesting that I don't think he's commented on it yet. And I don't think so. And so if there is a comment, I'm sure one of these fellows will tell you that there is a comment. I'm sure somebody's Googling it right now. right? And Bill Russell has commented on this, right? When you think about the Boston athletes, the Bill Russells come to mind. The current gen Celtics, the most what I'll say is that the most boisterous athlete I believe they had outside of David Ortiz was Paul Pierce. Even he really wasn't that vocal when things came up in Boston, right? So, well, Boston is known, if you look at the faces of their sports for a couple for the past decades, a lot of their faces have been the Pedro Martinez's, the David Ortiz's, the Paul Pierce's, and of course the 20-year, probably going on 30-year face of the Patriots, Tom Brady, right? And so when you look at Boston, they're not really known for having very vocal athletes. They're known for having fighters on the court. And so why am I bringing this up? Because you can tell a lot about a city by who the fans embrace. Now, of the faces of franchises I mentioned, like I said, the two most vocal athletes, if you remember after the Boston Marathon bombing, David Ortiz was known for saying, "This is our effing city," right? And so that's why I say that the Red Sox usually have the most vocal and boisterous players, which is why I'm not very surprised that an incident like this happened during a Red Sox game, because one of the things that Boston is known for is the Red Sox. That is, I think, their most winningest franchise that they have outside of the Celtics. Obviously, the Celtics are the most winning, but the one who's been winning most recently and the most in the championship department outside of the Patriots is the Red Sox. And the Red Sox is a beloved franchise in Boston. So I'm not surprised that this happened in Red Sox games. And I think that more should be done. Like I said, as I said earlier, to the Red Sox and Major League Baseball's credit, I guess they looked at the tape, found who those fans were, banned them for life, and said that none of that language will be tolerated. And I'm very happy for that. But, Boston definitely, like I said, this happens way too much in Boston. I'm sure you could talk to a lot of athletes, and as Draymond Green brought up, and when they asked him about it, he said that, I've had a lot of these incidents happen to me in Boston, right? And I'm sure a lot of athletes will say that. CC Sabathia came out and said, this only happened to me when I got called the N-word, specifically in Boston. So you think that's a man that's played for the Cleveland Indians, that's a man that's played for the New York Yankees, and the only time he ever heard the N-word is in Boston. It's a huge problem that for most athletes, the only city that they can point to where this happens at is Boston, right? And, that majorly does my point right there. Like, if you go out to every city, if you're a player in anything, the most cities that you'll see when you come to the East Coast, you'll see Philadelphia, you'll see New York, and you'll see Boston. Now, of those three cities with very vocal fans, the only time you hear the N-word is when you're in Boston. That means there's a big problem there. And, Jeff went on the sociological points about the racial undertones in these sports and everything. But, when you think of specifically baseball players, and I'm going to be real, Jeff brought up Jackie Robinson. There is a huge problem in the black community because African Americans are not playing baseball. And that's a huge problem. Like, it's severely dropped off, the black participation in baseball. There's really not a lot of baseball players who are black, right? And this is becoming a problem. Major League Baseball knows they have a problem. African Americans are playing basketball, football, and soccer and track more than they're playing baseball. So this is a problem in the sport that Jackie Robinson and many others may went through a whole lot to make interracial. So, like I said, and I'll end it with this, right? I agree with Jeff. Boston may not be the most racist sports town in this country, but I'll say this: many of these recent incidents and many incidents before that, where most athletes didn't have the platform. So I'm sure it happened more when most athletes didn't have the platform for it. When you have players of the type of a CC Sabathia, of an Adam Jones, some of the most recognizable black faces in the sport, saying, this happens to me way too much in Boston, or the only time this happens to me is in Boston. And you have other players in different sports saying, yeah, this only happens in Boston. I play a lot of games everywhere, but this really only happens in Boston. You have a problem, Boston, that you need to address. So, Trey, if you want to get back in, you can go.
I didn't have anything else. On Bill Russell, though, Bill Russell once, I'm not sure if it was him or somebody else wrote, but I think he was once quoted saying that Boston was the flea market of racism. So I'll just leave it with that.
Jeff, you got anything, or you're good?
No, I think we kind of hit on all the points here, but I think it's important to remember what happened in Boston. Happens at every ballpark across the nation, and we need to understand just how widespread and commonplace racism is. And I think for for people of color, it's easier for us to see it, and the even the small microaggressions of racism, and it's much harder for white folks, members of the dominant culture, to see racism when it happens, because oftentimes it doesn't look like Adam Jones being called the N-word. Racism always isn't going to look like that. Racism is going to look like why Chase Utley is so beloved, but why Jimmy Rollins caught flack for not running out to first base. And we need to understand that, but it's very hard for white people to understand why that's racist. Oh, I never called Jimmy Rollins an N-word. I'd never do that. I love Jimmy. Or I like Jimmy, but I really like Chase. Well, why is that? Why is that? Person? Mister? Why do you think that is? But they don't want to discuss that. So what I would say is, as we look at this situation in Boston, this is just the tip of the iceberg, and it's not isolated. And I think those are the main key takeaways there. It's not the tip of the iceberg, and it's not isolated. So if we can understand that, then we're moving in the right direction as far as understanding just how intricate racism is and how widespread it is. Because I think for a lot of people in this country, they're either willfully ignorant, they're sticking their head in the sand, or they just don't know because they don't have any contextual frame of reference to understand racism. So hopefully this gives an opportunity for people to have further dialogue. I know that it was discussed on, a couple of the sports radio stations today. So, hopefully that does add some opportunities for racial dialogue, and helps some people to see things in a broader context.
All right. So to wrap this up, so we can move on to our next hot take. This is it, right? In a perfect world, nobody should see color but their team's colors. But oftentimes it goes beyond. It's one of those times, as Jeff and Trey alluded to, this is one of those times where, this can't just stay out on the field. And as Jeff said, this probably happens at a lot of ballparks across the world, right? And to say all that, and we can bring up different incidents. Trey brought up what happened to Marcello Bartoli in Italy. He's a player that plays for the Italian national team, but even he doesn't get respect over there as they are more outward in expressing their racism, as they will throw bananas and peanuts and different things, different stereotypical things at some of their black athletes. Serena Williams has been called a lot of different things when she goes over there for Wimbledon. There are various different incidents that we can point out, but this is, as I've said, and as incidents point out, beyond Boston. This is just our little version of it. And like I said, the Major League Baseball, to Red Sox credit, they said this is not allowed and will be tolerated. So hopefully this will not happen again. But you have various different things, as Jeff pointed out. If this starts a discussion, then we've done our job. So hopefully this will get more attention and we can actually do something more than just, say, oh, player, you're lying, just go back to playing and getting the pay and getting the salary check. Because that is the answer to everything that I've seen. Whenever a player makes a stance, it's just take your money and shut up. So, we treat, and to a larger point, and this is what I'll close out and saying, and maybe we'll touch on this next week, we treat and I have to watch myself when I say this. Before I say this, I am not in support of any sexually based offenses. That's for you. Any crimes of the sexual nature and any of that. So before I say that, I want to say that nobody gets offended. We often treat our athletes like a lot of victims of sexual assault are treated, right? And you could allude this to college campuses and businesses. Fox News is a more recent example where we tell women who say this happened to them, oh, just shut up. This is just boys being boys. Take your paycheck, take your settlement, and don't even mention it again, right? And this is how we treat our athletes too. We treat our athletes the same way. We say, oh no, this couldn't happen. You're just lying. Stop being a Negro. Just take your money. Be an athlete. Be there for my entertainment and nothing else. I don't want you to have a comment on anything else. And we treat these athletes like they're just, that they have no lives outside of the basketball court, outside of the soccer field, outside of the baseball field that they're on. When these people are real people and they are affected by things that, just like us, we're affected by. And I'll end it on that. The second topic we have is on a more popular topic that just became a thing yesterday, Trump Care. Trump Care became a thing yesterday, guys. It passed the House, and it faces a tougher battle in the Senate. But I'm going to let the guys take off on that with their thoughts. Go ahead, Jeff.
Okay, I'm going to give my 2 cents, and then I got to bounce because it's movie night and my kids want to see. Have been asking me to come in there and watch a movie with them. So I'm going to have to bounce after I give my comments on Trump. Well, I would say on Trump Care. I think it's very telling when the Republican people who vote for this bill don't even want the same rules to be levied against themselves. They want to keep. They actually like certain parts of Obamacare, which means to tell me, so why repeal it? And they're keeping with this repeal thing. We're going to repeal. And it ekes. It really seems very similar to the way that those in the South wanted to do away with Black accomplishment coming out of the Reconstruction era. They almost wanted to erase it. Like, it's hard to find in history books exactly how accomplished Black people were post-Civil War. Like it's almost completely erased from the history books. You just don't hear about it. Um, and it really seems like that's what, one of the agendas that Trump and now the GOP has when it pertains to President Obama's legacy and his accomplishments in office. It's like they want to completely erase any semblance of the Obama era from Washington and from the country, in every aspect. I mean, if they look at something in the White House and it reminds them of President Obama, it's gone. I mean, today I was reading about how the usher, the chief usher at the White House in this position, the person in this position is supposed to transition from president to president to president. Trump let her go today. Black first African American woman to hold that position, and he let her go. And I can guarantee you that he's going to find a white man to take that position. It's telling when you look at, lawmakers who have voted on a health bill that will be so damaging to the health of women because, so many health issues that women go through would be considered pre-existing conditions, and now they can make it more expensive or even deny covering giving a woman health care based on these pre-existing conditions, but they're happy about signing it in. And when you look at the picture, what do you see? The optics aren't good. You see a old white man surrounded by other old white men clapping about basically taking away healthcare. Now, I don't know what they're really thinking that they accomplished by giving people substandard healthcare, but is Obamacare perfect? No, Obamacare was by no means perfect. But guess what? President Obama did something that no other president in U.S. history had done, and that was to champion and to pass universal health care, not just in a democratically controlled Congress and Senate, but he had to do it by reaching across the aisle. They needed Republican votes to get it done. So this wasn't the same situation in where you have a Republican president with a Republican-controlled Congress and a Republican-controlled Senate. So the ramifications are going to be long-lasting if the Senate just puts a rubber stamp on this. And I'm hoping and praying that they do not, that the senators have a higher level of integrity than the congressmen and women in the GOP who voted for this disaster of a bill, which should be DOA once it hits the Senate floor. I think that really a number the Republican Congress people, a number of them basically signed their termination papers today by voting for this bill. It's definitely surely will give a lot of political ammunition to their Democratic opponents. And if the Republicans, they did a lot of gerrymandering since they've been in control in this last cycle. So if indeed, there is enough excitement and enough anger on the left, and they can energize not only their base, but people who are independent or maybe even moderate leaning Republicans to vote Democratic, because the GOP took away their Obamacare, which they came to really like once they got in it. I think that what you're going to see is the House flip, hopefully. So hopefully after the midterms in 2018, we'll have a democratically controlled Congress, with, of course, 45 and the Republican-controlled Senate. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But, I mean, we need to be diligent and really understand the ramifications of this bill on those who we care about. We're going to see premiums go up. The bill had nothing in it in regards to reducing the cost of healthcare, which is a major reason why premiums are up. One thing that I would like to see change about our universal health care. Even if they kept Obamacare and they took their hands off of it, one thing that I would like to see changed about Obamacare is to have more competition in certain areas. We don't have that problem here in the Philadelphia area because we have so many different healthcare providers. So there's competition. But in a number of different counties across the country, you only have one insurance provider, which drives up the cost. So you have people who are experiencing Obamacare in two different ways. Depending on what state and what county they're living in. And a lot of that does fall at the feet of the Republican governors who didn't want to, participate. It falls, at the feet of, Republican strategists and Republican leaders who really did, a good, quote unquote, good job of branding Obamacare as bad, and because of that, people didn't enroll at the rate at where Obamacare needed it to for it to be completely successful. But it grew slowly. It didn't grow at the rate that President Obama, and his team thought it would, specifically because Republicans fought tooth and nail. And they're still calling it, the disaster that is Obamacare. Obamacare is a disaster. No, what's a disaster is the bill that the Republicans put together that the House Oversight Committee hasn't even fully vetted yet. How are you going to have a vote on a bill like this and the Oversight Committee hasn't even vetted it? That's dumb. And it's political suicide, hopefully, and we'll see some changes at the midterms. So, guys, that's my 2 cents on Trump Care, aka AHCA. They couldn't even come up with like an original name. Let's just add an H. It's just dumb. They just want to. It's like they want to bite off of it. It's like they couldn't come up with a better name. It's sad. It really is. But that's me.
All right, man. Well, before you go, Jeff, as always,
Yes,
thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule. I know you're really busy at this point.
Yes, sir. Number 4
Congratulations
is on the way.
Yes, congratulations on our daughter. As you just heard, he and his wife are expecting the 4th child, a girl. And that's why he hasn't really been on. He is literally Mr. No Days Off. So
That's right.
So thank you, man. Have a good weekend.
No doubt.
Definitely, hopefully after you get settled with the newborn and everything, hopefully we'll see you more. But like I said, thank you for coming when you can, man.
All right, no doubt, man. All right. See y'all later. Peace.
Okay. See you. All right, go ahead, Trey.
It's a wow. To be honest with you, I just heard about this a few hours before before we started the podcast, and I was a little bit shocked. Because if you look back at Obamacare, I wouldn't even call it Obamacare because to me that was a term that was created. That was in a way it was created to mock him. So I try to refrain from using that, and I just call it ACA. The Affordable Care Act, ACA, when it was put into place, it went. I mean, it was not something that like just got. It wasn't a bill that just got passed like right away like that without any vetting, or any it took a lot. Like Jeff was saying, like not only did he have the expected support from a Democratic controlled Congress, he also had to like reach over the aisle and grab support from the Republicans. And the ACA got passed. And it's been in place for however many years now. And now we have this AHCA, the American Healthcare Act that's been passed by a Republican Congress. And as far as I understand about some of the details about it, it's going to defund Planned Parenthood. It's going to significantly defund Medicaid and within the next 10 years. And a number of other things will be defunded. But I think one of the biggest concerns for a lot of people is the idea of pre-existing conditions. And I don't know about details about this, but I think there's a lot of complication around whether or not pre-existing conditions will be covered or not. And the other concern is whether people who are under the Affordable Health Care Act will lose their coverage under, or not necessarily lose all of their coverage, but will lose a large portion of their coverage under what we're now calling Trump Care, or the AHCA. So I mean, it's it's fun. It's funny now that this has been passed, because originally, it went ahead. It originally got put when it was originally out there. Everybody was against it. I think only about 15. I think it was 15 or 16% of people were in favor of this Healthcare Act, and they said, we're going to tweak it or blah blah blah, and now we get this tweaked version that's now gotten passed by the by majority Republican Congress. And although I don't think this is the worst thing in the world, I think that this is the beginning potentially of some other things getting passed that aren't necessarily in favor of a majority of United States citizen, and we're gonna. I think that potentially this could be the beginning of some things where we saw that Trump's campaign was kind of going downhill, and he has this very low approval rate. But I think this could potentially be the beginning of some policies that are put in place and can be seen by the right and the far right as successes by Donald Trump.
All right, my turn. It's funny. We call this thing a complete another. We were joking around about it a couple months ago, as Trey alluded to it. I think on the podcast before when that didn't pass. Spoiler alert. Those of you who don't watch the show often or don't listen to it often, we are all Christians here, so I refer to it as an act of God. Because everything was all set for it to pass a month ago in March. But the crazy. Trey calls them the far right, or a lot of you call them the alt right. I just call them the crazy right. The crazy right, said that this bill, literally as my nickname for them, you can guess by my nickname for them, wasn't crazy enough for them. So basically, and Trey alluded to this in the bill, the reason why your Medicaid and Medicare will be dying, the reason why your governor, depending on what state you are in, can now opt out of of all the stuff that Obamacare allows. So they don't have to. The governor can make it so if he's crazy enough, we'll say he or she is crazy enough. They will say, I don't feel like the health insurers in my state should have to pay for you to have a pre-existing condition. I think that's on you. It's your fault you got a pre-existing condition. For those of you who don't know what a pre-existing condition is, because I know it's hard, but let me give you a common pre-existing condition that most people have. Asthma. That's a common one. Cancer is a pre-existing condition. the more rare ones, Crohn's disease, and basically any disease or sickness you could think of outside of a cold and flu. Most of those are pre-existing conditions, right? So for those of you with asthma, it may be that once this passes, now this is no guarantee. As Trey said, it has to pass the Senate, and that's more of a fight. And the bill will probably be rewritten to make it make sense because there's not enough crazy right in the Senate. There are a lot more moderates, or as I like to call them, the sane Republicans, in the Senate. And senators are more, we only reelect senators around the time that we elect or reelect presidents. So they have a lot more time for you to forget about what they did before they ever come up for reelection again. So, excuse me. You have these different things with Trump care, and AHCA, that we need to fight. And as Jeff said, I hope that this, especially in the Philadelphia area, we have an election coming up on the 16th, May 16th. That was only for DA and controller of the city, but still, this is a test for all you people who, are extremely upset about different things. You should have local elections coming up. Now, a lot more of this stuff is determined locally than federally, but you need to get active. You need to be. I think we've said this before. Trey and I have said this. It's time to, and Matt has said it too. It's time to, if your senator or congressperson isn't cutting it, now you have to be 30. I think I've said this on this podcast before, to run and be a senator. And all you really have to do is be 25 to be a congressional representative. So all my 25 or soon to be 25-year-olds by November 2018, run. Get your signatures and run. Trey knows. We have a church member at our church who's running for judge, and she's a great person. But that's all you really need is signatures and a good campaign. Now she is running a very grassroots campaign. That's simple. Because a lot of us are not balling enough to be able to afford national attack ads and everything else. But that's really all you need to do. Get your signatures. Do your Facebook, your Twitter, your Instagram. A lot of things, they make fun of us for it, but a lot of stuff comes from social media, man. Us 18 to 35-year-olds, the one thing we understand is social media. So run your social media campaigns and get elected. Do something. It's time, man. It's time to ride this energy, man. I hope that a lot of you take your anger and make it a thing. Start voting. Vote more. The one thing about our age group is a lot of us don't vote. So, and I think that everybody here votes consistently, or if it was their first time voting, they're planning to make this a thing. So, we have to be active. We have to vote. You have to run. Do something, man. Turn this into energy. Like, I'm so happy to see all these different people who, if they didn't know who their congressperson was, they now know. Or they didn't know who their senator was, they know. Like, this is great for us. This is I think somebody pointed out now in this podcast, but somewhere else that I was watching, that a lot of this stuff has similarities to what happened when Obamacare was passed. Now, obviously that was a better bill. The Democrats went through the process and everything, but the next year during the midterm elections, the Democrats lost most of their seats and congressional control swung over to the Republicans. So I'm going to close with this, and I'll let Trey get back in, and then we'll go to our more sports topics after that if he has nothing else to add. But I put this on my Facebook, and didn't put it on my Twitter, but elections have consequences, unfortunately, and we're suffering the consequences of what happens during a presidential election. Go ahead, Trey, if you have any more.
No, I didn't have anything else to add.
Well, moving right along, we're going to talk about the NFL draft, which, as we talked about last weekend, was held in Philadelphia. All of us missed it because, excuse me, we had a men's retreat outside the city. But we're going to talk about it, what we think its impact will be on the city and everything, and how we think it all went. So go ahead, Trey.
Well, first of all, I'll just comment quickly on what we saw from the draft. I think the Eagles had a very good draft. I mean, it probably wasn't the ideal for what a lot of people thought the Eagles should have done in terms of who they should have drafted, what types of players they should have drafted. But hey, for me, Joe Douglas is bringing in change to the Philadelphia organization, and they're going to be committed to defense, and I'm okay with that. I do think, and Kylan has pointed this out time and time, written 2 articles about Dalvin Cook. I do think that they needed a running back, and this was probably the draft to go running back. But I think that the Eagles are in a good spot right now. Now, in terms of what the draft itself, and what it potentially did for the city, from what I'm hearing about people who went to the draft, things I'm hearing on sports, 94.1 and 97.5. People really, really enjoyed that. They had a great time in the draft, and not only the draft, but also the NFL draft experience, and the things that were going on in addition or alongside the draft. People really enjoyed themselves and had a good time. Philly people and people who were coming in from outside of to see who their team would draft. Now, one thing that I noticed, and I've seen this going around social media, is that there were if you didn't really keep up with the draft, during the draft there was a lot of booing going on, coming from Philly fans, probably some Patriots fans, and just in general booing of Roger Goodell. There was some booing going on of Drew Pearson, who's a former Cowboys player, and I've seen this going around social media that. The fact that the NFL draft ended and there were no arrests, or there was no issues with police officers. I just found that I kind of chuckled when I saw a few articles about that, and I was like, really, guys? Like, we're gonna make this, like, we're gonna make it one of those things, like, oh, nobody was arrested or anything like that. Like, I mean, nobody was arrested, and that's good. There were no, as far as we know, there were no situations where, there was an altercation or the police or security had to get involved, and that's good. But I don't think we need to make it about that. It's an NFL draft. Philly fans had their fun booing Roger Goodell and Drew Pearson, and I think, that's all it was. It was a good time for family, friends, and fans to see who their team would draft, and it was nothing more than that. Like, there was no need to bring in any idea that, there was, nobody was arrested or there was no altercations with police officers. Because, why would there have been? People were just booing. People were cheering or booing, their favorite team or a team that they didn't like or a player that they didn't like or an executive that they didn't like. But as particularly as for the city of Philly, I think hopefully, and I think Colin agrees with me, that people will realize, okay, hey, like, we need to have more things in Philly, because people really, really, really enjoyed having the draft in Philly. It seemed like before the draft, like, this was going to be a really awkward spot to have the draft right in front of the art museum, but it turned out that it was actually good, and it was good weather all week, or at least during those 3 days. So I think hopefully that this will start a motion or movement for other sporting events, like potentially the NBA draft or even All-Star Weekend, the NBA All-Star Weekend to happen in Philly.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Trey. We had a good time at the men's retreat. I was a little bit upset that we were missing the draft, but it is what it is. But as Trey said, he kind of covered most of the points. The draft was a very good time in Philadelphia. A lot of people that I talked to say, as Trey, they said that it was a good draft. I see the Facebook and the Twitter pictures. It seemed like everybody was having a very, very good / grand old time at the at the NFL draft. And as Trey said, I don't know why they made it about this because apparently nothing can go well in Philadelphia, even though we had the Pope, Made in America, a couple of different things come together. But apparently, they thought the NFL draft would be bad here. But we had a very, very good draft. And hopefully, as Trey said, it will start a movement and we'll have more things here. We're going to get into the exact plans of the city and a couple of topics from now. But I hope so too. I think they said that after this weekend, Philadelphia went from second to host the draft to first now because they want to give it to Dallas, but after last weekend, I think they're gonna give it back to us. So it's good. Hopefully we can keep the draft for the next as long as Chicago did. I think Chicago had it for at least 5 years. Hopefully we can have it longer than that because as I've said, I think that excuse me, Philadelphia needs to sell the fact that it has. I think I made this comment to Trey during the men's retreat that we were on that that we have this free space that we don't use, which is the Parkway. And we often, it never gets used because obviously nobody wants to have an outside event when it's cold outside. But, we have a space that could be used potentially year round if you knew what to do with it, not just when it's hot, to something that's a selling point. We should be able to always have a convention or something going on year round in the city. And I'm so glad now that the city is, it was always on the map, but there's even more on the map now as a result of having the various different things that we've had. Democratic National Convention once again recently, the Pope's visit, putting on Made in America successfully for 4 years, going on the 5th year this year. And this is a sports podcast, but gotta honk my city's horn. This is a great city. It's a great sports town. It's a great entertainment city. It's a good city to have something in. It shouldn't be that New York and Boston get all the conventions, and we're just in the middle saying, "What about us?" They don't have a big space like we do. So hopefully, the fact that $1 billion industry like the NFL can come here and put on their biggest event outside of the Super Bowl can make people think, oh yeah, I want to have my Comic-Con convention in Philadelphia. I want to have my such and such convention in Philadelphia because I see that the NFL did it and they had no problems. And I'm so happy that went off without a hitch. I thought that ever since the Pope came here, that if that didn't do it, then we needed more stuff. And now that we've had the NFL, I'm hoping that we can get a Super Bowl. As Trey said, I'm hoping we can get the NBA draft weekend again. I'm hoping NBA All-Star game. Heck, I want the NBA draft now. I think Wells Fargo Center is big enough for that, or the Convention Center, or the Kimmel Center. Like, I think that's big enough for that. Because the NBA draft is held in Radio City Music Hall. I think we have something that rivals that here in Philadelphia. So I definitely think that we can have more stuff here. And I'm so happy that the NFL draft went off without a hitch. And Trey kind of jumped into the next question a little bit. But my thoughts on the Eagles draft is as we said, and the joke at our men's retreat was that I jinxed the Eagles because I wrote an article about how it should have been that the best pick for the Eagles was Dalvin Cook at running back, and they wound up picking up Donald Pumphrey, who's basically a Darren Sproles replacement, but could be a big-time running back. And you know what? I hope he does become our 3-down running back. I know his size works against him because he's 5'8", but you know what? Maybe he can be that. Maybe he can be that guy to be a 3-down back. Maybe he can. Maybe some people pointed out that maybe they'll go get Saquon Barkley next year. But we say that every year as Eagles fans. Oh, it's all right. They'll get their big running back. I hope they get a big time running back next year's draft or they trade for one because they need one. But it is what it is. I'm just gonna calm down and say the rest of my thoughts for later. Go ahead and get back in, Trey.
Oh yeah, man. I didn't grow up in Philly, um, but I have family in Philly, and I love Philly. So um, like I do want to see more events like All Star Weekend, um, more drafts, other events in Philly. Um, it's funny though because um, and because I live in Delaware, so in Delaware we have what do you call it, the Firefly Music Festival that happens in Southern Delaware every year, and so that's like Delaware's claim to fame. But Philly, it's like the funny thing about Philly is that Philly, I mean, aside from the NFL draft or any other event, like it's not like Philly is an unknown city. Like people know Philly, people love coming to Philly. Um, you know, they'll come to Philly for a cheesesteak, or they'll come to Philly just to go see an Eagles game. They'll come to see the art museum. I mean, there's a number of things in Philly to see and do. Um, and with the addition of more conventions and more draft events and that type of thing, I mean, not only does that bring attention to Philadelphia as a city, it also brings revenue to the city itself, and so that's great for the city as a whole.
All right, so we're gonna get in, and since Trey already shared his thoughts on the Eagles draft class, I guess it's my turn. Then we'll just move on to the next topic because I think Trey already touched on his thoughts on the NFL on the Eagles draft class. But they the Eagles. The Eagles currently have a really good draft. I think I saw what somebody's ranking like the Eagles they thought had the number one draft class, which is really good. I mean, they got two cornerbacks. One who, if he gets healthy, will be a steal in the draft, and Sidney Jones. And I kind of called that. I said that they would draft a quarterback in the second round. Now, I didn't see drafting Reggie, the reincarnation of Reggie White, as the first pick. I obviously thought the 14th pick would be Dalvin Cook, as was alluded to in this podcast. It has been alluded to if you follow my website, WatsonSportsTake.com. Yeah, we needed Dalvin Cook, but we got who we got, and hopefully we'll get uh, somebody will emerge this season. But I thought it was a very good draft. It definitely had, as Trey pointed out, Joe Douglas's stamp of approval. It was a very Baltimore Ravens-esque draft where it was very defensive heavy and not a lot of offense. And the offensive players that were selected was a place of need. Now, the wide receivers that they selected, I have to admit, I don't really know about them, but I'm excited to learn more. I hope that they contribute to our special teams or immediately come in and become a fifth or sixth option because the top three options are already taken with Torrey Smith, Alshon Jeffrey, and Jordan Matthews. So, hopefully, these people will be more future wide receivers and top options. But we'll see. That's my thoughts on it. I thought it was a very good draft, and I see that the Eagles are becoming more and more like the Baltimore Ravens as they just hired somebody named TJ. Actually, I think his last name is TJ McConnell. Some people might have gotten confused when they saw this headline and thought it was the TJ McConnell that plays point guard for the 76ers. No, this is another TJ who was second in command of the Baltimore Ravens draft team. So Joe Douglas is slowly but surely making us the Baltimore Ravens. So, and if that happens, I would gladly take two championships in the last 2 decades. So, no, excuse me. If all this pans out, good for you, Eagles. Good pickup. But to Howie Roseman and Joe Douglas's credit, they had a good draft for the first one in Philly. And basically, I'll end by saying this: they better had. Trey, it's over to you, man. Trey, you there?
Yeah, I'm here, man. I'm sorry. I was cooking something in the kitchen. I didn't hear what the next question was though.
Oh, I just said if you have any more thoughts on the NFL draft class and stuff.
Okay.
Any more on the Eagles draft class, I should say.
No, I mean, in terms of Pumphrey, because I think he's the most, well, Pumphrey and Sidney Jones are the most intriguing picks because Pumphrey, I mean, potentially has potential to be, the number two back or maybe even the number one option this year or sometime this year. So I think that's intriguing there. But Sidney Jones, I think if he's healthy, he's going to be the steal of the draft, like you said, because, I mean, as far as I know, he was the number one ranked cornerback in the draft. But because of the Achilles injury, he dipped very far, and I'm intrigued by that because apparently his Achilles, although he did tear his Achilles, it was a higher Achilles tendon tear, and for whatever reason, because it's a higher tear, and because he's so young, I believe he's only 20 or 21 years old or something like that. That he should be able to come back from that injury and go right back to being the player he was in college. So I'm excited about that.
All right, we're moving right along. Well, as it's been the last week, we can't go a story without talking about Lonzo Ball. Lonzo Ball and his daddy came out with big baller sneakers. Those of you might be under a rock, so I'll save you, and you're probably Googling it right now as I speak, but big baller shoes will cost you a whopping $495 plus tax. So it's funny because both of our dads, Trey and mine, are both accountants, so both of our fathers would say, that's $500. Howard just rounded up. So $500 for sneakers plus tax. So Trey, what do you think about that?
Oh my lord, man! I heard about this last night because I think last night was the day it came out, and I got a little notification from ESPN, and I saw the price, and I was like, $500 for a pair of shoes for a college player? What? Lonzo Ball? What? And then there's another pair that they're actually selling. That's the only thing different from them is that they're signed by Lonzo Ball. So they're instead of being $495, they're a whole $500 more. So they're $995 or $1,000 essentially. Which I just find to be hilarious. Like, I mean, all this for, I mean, I applaud LeVar and his family for, putting out this big baller brand. Because I think, we talked about it last week that I think LeVar Ball is part of the reason why nobody wants to sign Lonzo. But, I mean, if you look at the shoes, I don't know if you've seen them yet, Colin, they really look like Kobe's. They're, I mean, as far as I know, based on the pictures I've seen, they are, they're low tops and they have that Kobe vibe, but they have like a big like Z, I think, on the back or something like that, like LZ or something like that. I can't really remember, but they're nice shoes. They're just not worth. They're just $495. There's no way they're worth that. And this is where it gets, this is where it becomes a touchy subject because, and this is, this goes for Nike, who makes, LeBron shoes and any other shoes, Jordans. This came about, this came about recently with Jordans and Stephon Marbury, who, has been selling his shoes for, they're, in terms of quality, they're probably about on the same level in how they're made as Jordans. Maybe they don't look, as appealing to the naked eye as Jordans do, but quality-wise, they're about the same. But they're sold at a much lower price than Jordans are, but in terms of quality and the price, the cost of making them are about the same. And so you're just kind of like hyping up the price for shoes that probably could be, if they're $300, they could probably be $150 and you're not, maybe you're not making as much profit, but you know, and so this is where it's a touchy subject because I imagine that those shoes, these Lonzo Ball, these ZO2s, probably cost, I mean, at the most maybe $10 to make. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how much money the Ball family has. I don't know how much, um, how much LeVar Ball and the rest of his family has put into this to making these shoes. But I can't imagine that, one pair of shoes cost more than maybe maybe $20 to make. And I mean, $20 as far as what I know about other shoe companies that's expensive in terms of cost and what it costs to make a shoe. And you're selling it at almost $500. I mean, your profit margin is huge. And to me, this is where it becomes exploitation because, I mean, there's going to be kids who, may really like Lonzo Ball, maybe like the way he plays or whatever the case may be. And they're going to go buy those, they're going to go beg their parents to buy these $500 pair of shoes that probably aren't worth more than $100. And this has been a consistent thing with any sports shoe. Nikes, Jordans, not as much with Under Armour and Adidas, just because they're not as, people don't really look to them as the frontier of basketball sneakers or sports shoes in particular. In general, you think about Nike and Jordan in terms of, and this is specific to basketball. But I mean, to me, I think it's a little bit outrageous to be pricing a pair of shoes at $495 and $995 because they're signed by Lonzo Ball. At first, to be honest with you, I thought it was a joke. I thought it was something like, they're selling one pair that's $490, or excuse me, they're. I thought that the pair that he had been signed was $495, and that was like a limited time thing. Like they're only going to be selling like 10 of these pairs for $495. So if you want them, get them now. That's it. Almost kind of what Kanye did with his Yeezys, with the Red Octobers. But if that was the case, then I'd be like, okay, profit margin is still a little bit big, and it's kind of you're still kind of exploiting people in a way. But at least you're not like marketing these shoes and saying, okay, hey, we're selling these shoes at $495. Like, but no, the fact is that they're selling these ZO2s at $495, which is actually about, I mean, you buy a pair of LeBrons for maybe $250. So, I mean, you can do the math. That's over $300 more than a pair of LeBrons. Like, and LeBron is the greatest player on the planet. And we're saying that Lonzo Ball, who's my age, maybe even a little bit younger, just finishes. Actually, I believe he is younger because he just finished his freshman year in college. I'm technically a sophomore in college. My man is, I mean, like, really $495 for a pair of shoes, and then $995 for a pair of shoes that a college player signed? Come on. I think it's extremely outrageous, and there's an extreme level of exploitation that I think is going on, and it's not necessarily particular to this big baller brand that the Ball family has started.
Usually I'm a fan of. I am, as some people may know me, those of our loyal listeners, they might know me as I'm all athletes get paid, go get your money, Colin. Usually I would say all that, but with this, I'm not going to say all that. I think out of all 3 or 4 of us, I'm probably the most secret heady out of everybody. I used to say I would never pay such and such amount of money for such and such. Then I started saying, oh, then I started working and saying, okay, some of these sneakers are looking more and more. Now I will say I've never paid more than I think $200 for a pair of sneakers, which, as Trey pointed out, is the usual Nike price, somewhere between $190 and $250, depending on what you're buying. But $500, you might as well just round that up. $500 plus tax? No way, Jose. And I think it was pointed out by Bomani Jones on ESPN that most people that buy sneakers for that price are people in his age group. I think he's like 32, 33. So that's like the 35 to 45. I don't know what that age group is. The 35, I guess, to 50 demographic. And if that demographic ain't buying your sneakers, then they have a lot. They're the demographic that are the most sneaker heady. That's the people that are on YouTube. Talking about the sneakers. They're probably the YouTube people that you follow when you want to get a sneaker update. That's the demographic we're talking about, 35 to 50. We're not talking about Trey and my demographic, the 18 to 35. We ain't there yet. But, that's the demographic that you're trying to appeal to. I don't even think they'll pay $500 because I'm not trying to pay $500 and I'm in my mid-20s. I know Trey, and I think Trey's on the same boat with me, that $500 is just too much. Like I said, only pay $190. Now, Trey lives, as he just said, he lives in the, excuse me, as I like to say, the state of no taxes in Delaware. I live in the state where we don't tax you for any necessities. So when I pay taxes for when he or I buy something, if it's online or not, it's usually the price, and we don't have to pay anything more than the shipping for it. So it is awesome living in Pennsylvania and Delaware. But for that reason alone, but obviously he lives in the more financially sound state of Delaware where they don't charge you for anything taxually. That is. I just can't, man. And whether this was his father, I think they said Lonzo designed the shoes, and Trey's right. They look like a sneaker that most kids would design when it comes to. You can see the inspiration of the Jordans, the Kobe's, the LeBrons, and probably the Kyries. Because I've seen the picture, and that's what they remind me of. But I'm not paying $500 for. I have the Nike app, so I was looking at the most recent sneaker. I think. Jordan, speaking of Jordan has a sneaker coming out for $95 less for $400, but that is a premium, that's a premium sneaker that they advertise it. They say this is the Air Jordan 5 Premium. It's an all-white sneaker for $400. Now, I said the same thing that Trey said when I saw $495 and when I saw that sneaker at $400. I was all like, who paying that? I thought about it, and I was all like, well, I know I'm not paying that, but, if it misses, because I think this is his debut weekend, and so what I'm hoping happen, what I've seen happen with Jordans is if they don't sell them out right away, they start lowering the price. So I'm hoping he gets down to a regular price of $190, but those sneakers look sick. Yeah, Trey, if you got time, look up the Air Jordan 5 Premiums. I'm not saying buy them, but look, they're some sweet-looking sneakers. But, I'm not going to back to the topic at hand. I'm not going to pay $495 to support an unproven commodity with 1 year of college. He got to at least have some signature moments before I even think about paying $495 for anybody's sneaker. I love Michael Jordan, but I ain't paying $495 for his sneaker. You know how many game systems, credit card bills, and a lot of other things you can pay off for $495 or pay into? Nah. That's a down payment on a car. That's something. You could buy a couple of Jordans for $495, a couple of Kyries, a couple of LeBrons, a couple of Kobe's. It's ridiculous. And I don't know whose idea it was to do $495. And then I heard from ESPN that, and Trey will love this, if you don't have a regular size, so say if you're an NBA player, football player, or soccer player, excuse me, if your size is, let's just say, if you're not a regular size, so if you're a size 13 or above, you get the luxury sneaker because you pay $700 plus tax for it. So yeah, for once it's gonna pay to have regularly sized feet, if you want those sneakers. But let me just say this: more power to anybody who sees this. They might see the tones of it and say, know what, I'm going to support this young man and pay $495 for your sneakers, do that, but I'm not doing it. You know, he gonna have to come out with a cheaper version for me to support him. You know, I know they're trying to become billionaires really quick, but $495 to $700 for shoes is not the way to do it. Nah, I'm not doing it. Trey, I'm gonna let you get back in.
I mean, the funny thing is that if you want to become rich, this whole rich quick thing, or become billionaires. I mean, I don't have any problem with somebody who has an ambition, to make money and to be successful as a business person. And I don't know what kind of experience LeVar Ball has in terms of business. But as a business student in college, I mean, $495 is a ridiculous price, and I would never charge it for a pair of shoes. I don't care who Lonzo Ball is. I don't care who LeVar Ball is. I don't care what I'm trying to do. $495 is outrageous. And I don't care. I don't like. It's just an outrageous price for a pair of sneakers. $495 is lit. I mean, like, I'll be honest. When I make a Chick-fil-A, that's a normal paycheck. I mean, that's literally for me to buy a pair of the shoes. I literally had to put out. I would just have to say, hey, for 1 week, hey, I gotta, I ain't got no gas money. No, I'm bringing food. I'm packing a lunch, coming to work. That's a paycheck for me. So, I mean, I think that it's ridiculous, and it's not the way to become. I mean, first of all, Lonzo Ball is probably going to be the first or second pick in the draft. So, I mean, he's going to get a nice check. Okay? His salary is going to be nice. All right? And, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. When I saw it, it just kind of, like, smacked me in the face. $495. Like, what? For a pair of sneakers for a college player? Like, it's just so outrageous. Like, it almost angers me, like, to see a pair of shoes that costs that much. And then not only that, I have very wide feet, so it's very hard for me to find shoes. Right? I tend not to wear I have a pair of Nikes. Luckily, I was able to find a pair of Nikes in a wide size. But usually, it's very hard for me to find shoes like a pair of Nikes or whatever the case may be in a wide, just because they don't really make a lot of shoes that way. So the idea that, like, somebody who has, just because they have bigger feet, are going to pay $200 more for a pair of sneakers, I mean, it's just like, to me, the money, the finance behind all of this just doesn't add up. Like, I mean, like I said, let's say that these shoes cost $20 to make, and they're charging $495, and if you have bigger feet, it's $700, and then the ones that are signed by Lonzo are $500 more than the regular shoes. Like, the math just does not add up. And even if they lower the price, they set the price at $495. I mean, they're not gonna. I can't imagine them going from $495 to $195, in a matter of a couple weeks. Like, I mean, they're gonna have to gradually go down. Like, I mean, it's not like they like. To me, I think a few people will buy these shoes, right, because they like Lonzo Ball, and they're not only selling shoes, they're selling T-shirts, hats, and I was just looking on the website, they're selling T-shirts for like $50, just a normal T-shirt with the Big Baller brand sign on the front, and it's like, okay, like $50 for a T-shirt, like what? I mean, I go to Goodwill, okay? And get my discount on Wednesdays, for my student discount on Wednesdays. Like, $50 for a T-shirt? Come on. I mean, I could ramble on about this all day, but to me, I think it's outrageous. I mean, it's just outrageous.
Outrageous, man. Shaquille O'Neal, I think, even said they're ridiculous, and Shaquille O'Neal has made a lot of money off of shoes, because for those of you that don't know, Shaquille O'Neal has sneakers that he sells out of Walmart for $20. So he's made a lot of money off of people who are cheaper, who are I won't say cheapskates, but who like sneakers at an affordable price. That's what I'll say. I won't say that they're cheapskates. I don't want to say that about all you frugal people that shop for sneakers very frugally. So but as I've said, the sneakers. This is ridiculously priced for $495 sneakers. As you can tell, we are the sons of men who work in the finance industry because we just financially talked about this stuff. But essentially, yeah, that's $500 for sneakers plus tax. Depending on the state you live in. So that could run you $10 to $20 more. So it's $500 plus $20, then $50 more for a T-shirt. Excuse me. Soon they'll be selling you Air. They'll be really on their Kanye West and sell you Air for $1,000 that Lonzo Ball breeds. And don't put it past LeVar Ball to not do that either. I can see him as one of those people that would do that. But moving right along to our next thing. We would have had Matt's baseball update, but Matt's not here, so we'll just move right along on that one. So Trey, have the Cavs turned on the switch, or is the East just that weak? Go ahead, Trey.
I don't know. Like, there's this ongoing debate about whether or not there's this switch for teams, and I think that to one extent that certain teams do have somewhat of a switch. Certain players have a switch. I think LeBron is one of those players where he has somewhat of a switch. I think it's not necessarily a switch. I think it's the case is that he's the greatest player, on the planet right now. Maybe he's not the greatest of all time, but he's the greatest on the planet right now. And LeBron sometimes won't play up to standard. I like to call it beast mode. What LeBron will do is he'll kind of coast through the regular season, and it's amazing because his coasting. And even this season, he had a season that he did something that most people can't do and don't do. He put up 25, 8, and 8. And I believe he actually had a career high in assists at the age of 32. So LeBron James, I don't necessarily know if he has a switch, but I think he has another gear that he takes himself into once he hits the playoffs. Because we looked at towards the end of the season, they were terrible. They were 10-14 towards the end of this in the second after the All-Star break, and it was like, okay, maybe the Cavs are doomed, but they've won their first 7 games of the playoffs. They swept the who did they play in the first round? They played the Pacers in the first round and swept them, and now they've just gone up 3-0 on the Raptors, who by all means were one of the teams that we thought might be able to challenge the Cavs. But the funny thing is, there's a stat that's out there that every time, or excuse me, 3 out of the 4 times that LeBron has gone 6-0 in the first 6 games of the playoffs, he's going to the finals. So, is the West weak? Yeah, it is. It is a very weak conference. And I think that's part of the reason why LeBron has been to the finals 7 times in a row. But out of those 7 times, he's got 3 championships. So, what is that? That also says something there that he has Miami and one in Cleveland, and very well could potentially have one this year. I don't know. If LeBron does do that, his legacy will be. I don't know. His legacy is already pretty much unquestionable about where he stands in terms of his greatness. But LeBron James is one of the greatest of all time, and I don't know if he has a switch. It's more of a next gear, and I think when he turns on that next gear, his next year affects the rest of his team. His beast mode, kind of affects the rest of the team, and the rest of the team plays up to par or better than usual. And in the case of the Eastern Conference, is it weak? Yes, but I don't think that you can take away what LeBron or the Cavs have done to the extent where you say that because the East is weak, that's the only reason why the Cavs, are in the position that they're in. I just don't see that as the reason why that they are where they are. I mean, LeBron James is the greatest player in the NBA, and I mean that's that.
All right. Well, hashtag hater alert. Because I think that LeBron James is the greatest player on the planet. But I also think I agree with Trey that while he has a switch, that is another gear, if you will. He does not have the high enough, and maybe I'll write an article about this. He has a high enough. He does not have a high enough gear to cover up the Cavs' defensive weakness. They do have a very defensively weak team that LeBron James is not helping. Now it's helped by the fact that they're 6-0 and they've been blowing people out by 20 or 15 or more points, so it won't show up. But the Cavs have been turning over the ball a lot. I was watching that game. I think they had like 15 turnovers to the Raptors 3. They also were losing in block shots. Now you would think that a team with Tristan Thompson and LeBron James, would have more blocks, but I think they ended that game with about 1 or 2 blocks in comparison to 5 or 6 blocks that the Raptors had, and you would expect the Raptors to have blocks with a blocker on their team. But the Cavs are good for at least 1 or 2 a game. But you have a lot of different things. So I will say this: the Cavs are 6-0 in the playoffs only because of LeBron James. But so far, so good. LeBron James has been facing lesser competition and has done what you're supposed to do: blow them out, destroy them, and get a rest. But I fully expect that streak to end, regardless of whoever they play in the Eastern Conference. I think that they won't have a breeze if they face the Celtics or the Wizards. I think that will at least go 6 games. I want to say that might be the Eastern Conference semifinals. In another week or two will be probably the most competitive ordeal that the Cavs will face besides the finals. If they make it that far. Basically, I'm not going to hand LeBron his 7th or 8th final appearance because he's got to get through the Celtics or the Wizards for that one. So I definitely think that while he's doing good, he's doing records for somebody in his age demographic. Usually, people fall off at that age, not have their best statistical year and most efficient year of their career. He's improved on his 3-point shooting. He's done a lot more things that he wasn't known for doing. Like some people would always say that the weakest part of LeBron's game was the 3-pointer. Excuse me. He's made that basically someone would argue the strongest part of his game because, as he gets older, his body can't really eat. Yes, people, I'm saying this. Even though LeBron James is basically the Hulk on the basketball court, you can tell that he is slowing down. That's why he's shooting a lot more outside jump shots and only occasionally goes inside. He is doing what most players do when they get older, start developing an outside jump shot, and the Cavs will go as far as LeBron James takes them. So I look forward to seeing how far that will be. But I still have the Cavaliers losing to the Warriors if they make it that far in 6 or 7 games. So I'm good either way. But I'm happy. I'm happy for the Cavaliers. I'm happy that they're not looking too weak. And to answer the other half of the question, yes, the Eastern Conference is weak, but this is one of its stronger years. Even though the Cavaliers aren't making it look like that, I think they probably should have changed the bracket and probably given the Raptors the Celtics and the Wizards the Cavaliers, because I think that would have been a better matchup. But it is what it is. So you only play the teams on your schedule, and the Cavaliers are doing well with the teams on their schedule. So that is what it is. So have they turned on the switch? I guess so. Trey, unless you have anything to add, we'll move on. But if you have something to add.
Nope.
Cool. All right. So, is Isaiah Thomas on his way to becoming a superstar, Trey? Matter of fact, before you go, I'll answer this question. Yes, he is on his way to becoming a superstar. You know what? Isaiah Thomas was a star, and I know we casually throw out superstar, but Isaiah Thomas, for somebody who was the Mr. Irrelevant of the NBA draft, right? The person who got drafted last. He has come in with a little chip on his shoulder. He talks to Kobe almost every night after a game. And he put up, I cannot overstate this, 53 points on the day of his sister's birthday. Now, most people would crumble if they're with a sibling or somebody close to them died, right? But Isaiah Thomas is so hungry and so dedicated to his team and his teammates that, he had the funeral and got back, because he had to fly back because he's from Washington State. So he had to go over to the West Coast or the Best Coast. He went over to the West Coast and came back, flew into Chicago, and then got back at 4 a.m. for a game at like 3:30 or 4 o'clock the next day. Still came, still played his little heart out. Yes, he is a superstar. So much so that, like I said, he talks to Kobe. Kobe wants to work with him on his game. This is a man that has the Kobe stamp of approval. This is at least like his 5th or 6th year as a starter. And he's only, and Trey will probably correct me on this if I'm wrong, I want to say he's only 24, 25 years old. So he still has a lot of prime left in him. But yeah, he is the little engine that could literally. He's a superstar. Now the mantle of his superstarness will be proven when they have their eventual date with LeBron and the Cavs. That should be a good matchup of two players that their teams depend on, and they're so dependent on them. That'll be the battle of the one-man wrecking crew teams. So we will see when that eventual matchup happens. But I'm so very much excited, and I'm saying it. Isaiah Thomas is a superstar. Go ahead, Trey.
Oh yeah, man. I love Isaiah Thomas, man. He's one. He's 5'9", and that's probably a generous listing. But man, does he play with some toughness? He's a great player, and I think he's one of those players. I spoke about John Wall a couple months ago. He's one of those players that really doesn't, or really didn't in the past, get enough respect. When he was, if you don't know, he was on the Kings. He was originally drafted by the Kings, and he was the last pick in the NBA draft. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he was drafted the same year as DeMarcus Cousins. They were actually DeMarcus Cousins. Ironic. This is a fun fact for you guys. DeMarcus Cousins, Isaiah Thomas, and Hassan Whiteside were all on the same team at the same time, and were all drafted by the Sacramento Kings. Now, I don't know if they would have been able to handle that salary cap wise, but imagine that team. But as to Isaiah Thomas, man, I mean, he's a superstar. Like, he can score in a ton of ways. He's quick. He can shoot. He's tough. If you saw the pictures of him with his teeth out, he continued to play during that game. He didn't let that stop him. I think afterwards he had some I think, a 2-hour surgery on his teeth, and now, he's continued. I mean, his sister passed away just recently. I mean, and he's balling out. Now last night, they had somewhat of a it wasn't a great game. They got blown out by something like 25 points by the Wizards. But I mean, I love Isaiah Thomas as a player, and he is definitely on his way to being a superstar. If not, he's already a superstar in my mind. And I don't know. I mean, if Isaiah Thomas is not considered a superstar by the end of this or going into the next season, I think that's a shame. Now, the unfortunate thing about Isaiah Thomas is that he is not very young. Actually, he's 28. He came into the league in 2011, same year as DeMarcus Cousins. But I think he's about 2 years younger than DeMarcus Cousins because if I'm not mistaken, he came out of I believe Washington. But he was as a senior, or it was either a junior or senior, so he was a little bit older than most players in the draft. He was 23 or 24, and now that he's been in the league for 6 years now, so I guess if he's 28 now, got drafted in 2011. I guess he would have been 22 coming out, or turning 23. So he's actually getting towards the tail end of his career. And he's now just being recognized as, a premier point guard in the league, which is unfortunate. I think that he's got a lot left in the tank, but we'll see. We'll see what happens, because at 28 he's on the downside of his career, unfortunately.
Man, I don't think so, man. Like, I don't care about his age, man. You see what LeBron's doing. You see what Steph Curry is doing. So that means he's about the same age as Steph. A little bit younger than Steph Curry, because I think Steph is 27, 28. So at the same age as Steph Curry is. So that means, he's going to be working with Kobe. So that's going to be great for him. He'll hopefully learn the jump shot and everything else, because like most superstars, his jump shot is a little bit weak. He can be better at jump shots, but he's definitely a superstar in my book already. And the 53 points really cemented it, and the fact that he played basically with 2 broken teeth also in the game before that just cemented it for me. That's a superstar. That's a man that's ready for his team, and he's such a superstar that he gave that. Now, Boston, when they first started before this, they had various different things wrong with the team. They weren't gelling, and ever since his sister died, it's unfortunate that his sister died. Our condolences to the Thomas family, but it seems that brought that team together. So there's always some sunlight in tragedy, and it's really brought that team together. And I'm just excited to see what Isaiah Thomas does the rest of the playoffs, and to see what happens with him. So we're going to move on to the next question in our basketball block. Trey, can anything stop the Warriors? Go ahead, Trey.
I don't know. I think the Warriors are a very good team. They've got 4 All-Stars on their team. So think about this. Last season they had 3 All-Stars on their team, right? You got Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green. And they go up 3-1 on the best player in the world and his comrades, right? And somehow Kyrie Irving and LeBron James step up and end up winning the series, right? Now you throw Kevin Durant into the equation. So now you got 4 All-Stars on one team, and this is supposed to be the piece to the equation that will put them over the supposed hump when they were 73-9 last season. They're by record by actual win total, they are the best. They were the best team ever. Um, and then this year, I think they won something like 67 or 68 games. Um, but I don't know who can stop the Warriors, outside of them. I think if anything stops the Warriors, it will be themselves. I think if anything stops the Warriors, it will be chemistry issues. Um, you know, it's going to come. Whatever stops them is going to come from within, I think. And I was looking at excuse me. I was looking at the spread for the Utah Golden State series, and the spread for game 2 was 13.5. And I was like, 13.5? What? Really? No respect for the Utah Jazz? I mean, Utah Jazz they beat the Clippers in 7 games, and they're a very good team. They're a very underrated team. And I looked at the score of game 2. In game 2, I think it was 115 to 101. So, I mean, that spread was right on point. The spread was 13.5, and the Warriors won by 14. So, I mean, it's I mean, the only thing that's going to stop the Warriors is the Warriors. I don't think that they're going to. I think when they get to the conference finals, they're not gonna. That's not going to be an easy series, and I don't think that they're going to be a team that's just going to like run over whoever they meet up with in the finals. Unless that team, the only team that they will not run over in the finals is LeBron, because I don't see that happening. Although defensively, the Cavs are nowhere near what they need to be in order to meet up with what the Warriors present on offense. I just don't see that, the Warriors going up 3-1 again, or even sweeping the Cavs. Any other team, really, to be honest with you, like the Wizards or the Celtics being in the finals against the Warriors, that's an easy, sweep or even 5-game series. And unfortunately, I don't think that the Cavs have the ability at this point to stop the Warriors and really go and win the championship. But we'll see. Nobody thought that the Cavs would win that series. It was 3-1, but after they won Game 5, man, everybody was like, "Hey, there's a chance." It's 3-2 now. It's only 3-2. It's only 3-3 now. Now they can, and then they win Game 7, and they're the champions and become the first team ever to come back from a 3-1 deficit in the finals, at least. So as of now, I don't think anybody's going to stop them but themselves. But we'll see what happens, when the time comes.
And yeah, to go along with that, I think go along with Trey. I think the only thing that'll stop the Warriors is the Warriors. But I think that I'm one of those people who said that you should never doubt a team that loses devastatingly, and I was proven right when UNC won the title. And I think the Warriors are gonna give me a second correct guess. So I definitely think that the Warriors, because statistically they are a better team than last year's juggernaut team that won 73 games. And you can say the difference is Kevin Durant, but I think the difference is that the Warriors have gelled and come together since that loss. And so I definitely think that that they're a better team defensively. They're number 1 in defensive efficiency, which is going to be bad for the Cavaliers or anybody that plays them, because the defensively they have improved. They went from number 2 and number 3 in defense last year to number 1. So that means that this team, even without Kevin Durant, they were a top 3 defensive team, but now they've gone from a top 3 defensive team to the top defensive team in the league, right? And they're leading the league in blocks, and they've had people, Kevin Durant has made a difference, but Zaza Pachulia has also given them a solid person in the middle who's more reliable than, who was the guy they had? Mr. Injury, the Australian injury prone. What was his name? Fred, help me out. Who was the center's name? Bogut. Andrew Bogut. Right? So he's definitely more reliable than Andrew Bogut. And he's got a reliable jump shot. He's been their anchor in the middle, which I know a lot of people laughed at when they signed him last year. But, and who would have thought that, on this year's Warriors team, like, they have a solid big man this year in JaVale McGee, a solid backup who's been playing really good minutes for them. Now, most people wouldn't know that unless you paid attention to the Warriors. You would think JaVale McGee is just being him and being a bum this year. But no, he's actually played very, very well this season. So I definitely think that the Warriors, I agree with Trey, that's the only thing that's going to stop them is them. But I definitely think that the Warriors could. And this is why I say the only reason I say that, where this was, if the Warriors didn't have fuel to the fire, and this is the only reason I'm saying they might sweep the Cavs. I'm not saying they are going to sweep the Cavs, but I think they might sweep the Cavs because of the added things that we talked about in this podcast. We talked about before. I think a lot of us have all been in agreement that trolling that the Cavaliers have been doing to the Warriors, and the fact that the Warriors have just been better than the Cavs in every statistical category besides having LeBron James. I think that all that trolling and all that stuff, like a lot of people think the Wizards and Celtics series is, very, very, very heavy with the pettiness and toughness. I'm telling you right now. Now I haven't seen it yet because it hasn't happened yet, but I'm telling you right now that series might be the chippiest finals we have seen in the last few years. Because I definitely won't be surprised if the Warriors, this is the only reason why I say the Warriors might sweep them. Because the Warriors have like the most added fuel to the fire ever. Like, as Trey said, no team has ever lost a 3-1 lead. And I've said this before on this podcast, never doubt a team that's lost a 3-1 lead. Never doubt a team that's gone through a devastating loss. And, they just have that motivation to destroy, the whatever team is in front of them. And I don't think the Warriors will say this, but I think that every team that they see, it don't matter who they play, is the Cavaliers to them. Because the way they've been destroying teams is I literally think that all they see, it don't matter what the team is the Cavaliers. I really do think. And this is the only reason why I say it's going to come back to bite LeBron, where the only thing that's going to be worse for him, because we've already said we're all in agreement that this is the weakest team he's ever going to lead to the finals, that they might just get swept by the Warriors just because of that added fuel. And to me, I think every team that the Warriors have played, they've seen as the Cavaliers. Trey, I'm going to let you get back in.
I didn't have anything much else to add, but I'll say this. As far as the Cavs go, and their ability or non-ability to compete with the Warriors, it's a very similar situation because you think it may not seem similar, but think about this. Think about it this way. And I don't know. This could just not make sense at all. But the Cavs are in the East, right? And the East is by far the weaker of the two conferences in the NBA, right? And so the argument is made that the Cavs, and LeBron, or when LeBron was with the Heat and now that he's back with the Cavs, that LeBron has had an easy path to the finals, right? On the other hand, on the other side, in the Western Conference, you have the Golden State Warriors, right? And last year they went 73-9. This year they won 68 games, right? And the West is considerably, by far is a much better conference, and year by year it tends to be the more competitive conference in terms of, you know, the difference and um, how good, you know, the difference between, you know, a 1 seed or a 2 seed, or like a 4 seed and a 5 seed, or uh, a 6 and an 8. Um, but for whatever reason, in the West, the Warriors have still been able to dominate, in the same way that the Spurs have been able to dominate for the past, you know, almost 20 years now. Um, and my point is that the Warriors are able to dominate in this so-called more competitive conference, and the Cavs are able to dominate in this, or at least not this year, but they're able to succeed and have success in this weaker conference. But the Warriors are still the best of the Western Conference, and the Cavs are still the best of the Eastern Conference. And for the Cavs' sake, if that doesn't mean anything, then I guess the Warriors really, you know, maybe we might have to give the Warriors, you know, the name of best team ever, and you know, by record and just by, you know, makeup of team. So I mean, that's the last thing I had to say.
I'm just gonna end by saying this. Uh, on as I allow in by saying this, do not doubt a team that suffered a devastating loss, and do not be surprised if the Warriors just outright, whether you think LeBron James is the best player or not, it doesn't matter if LeBron James has been on the court or not. Don't doubt that the Warriors. You might not think it may happen, but the game hasn't been played yet. So don't be surprised because of how defensively weak the Cavaliers are if the Warriors destroy them in 4 games or less. I'm saying right now that it will go 6 games, but just don't be surprised if the Warriors destroy the Cavaliers in 4 games, because I really do believe that the Warriors are of one singular mind. And the only thing I can compare this to is UNC, because this is the most recent example where UNC was of one singular mind, and it didn't matter what team was in front of them. That their determination and their singular mind was to win that championship. And if you don't see that right now in the Warriors, with the fact of Steve Kerr is out and they're still dominating teams by 15 to 20 points, then you're just blind, man. The Warriors are one singular mind, and that is to get that championship and to literally cripple mentally, physically, or both LeBron James and his Cavaliers. Like, I'm telling you now, the trolling. Now, I've never spoken to anybody of the Warriors team, but I can just tell in the way that they're playing that the Warriors are not playing around with any team that comes in front of them. If the Cavaliers take them lightly, or if they get to playing with the Warriors, they will get destroyed in 4 games or less. Well, it can't be less. In 4 games, they could possibly get destroyed in 4 games. And that's with LeBron James. And some people say, oh, it's LeBron James. He's never. Y'all forget that he got swept by the Spurs a couple of times. So this will not be the first time. I'm not saying it is going to happen, but I'm saying it's likely to happen with how defensively weak the Cavaliers are. Not be surprised if the Warriors destroy them in 4 games. So, Trey, we're moving on to Jay Cutler and him becoming a broadcaster. Do you care? Go ahead, Trey.
Well, with Jay Cutler, I mean, he had such a fallout. Really, I mean, it's so. I mean, well, excuse me, the Bears in general had a fallout. Like, I mean, you go back 3 or 4 years. I mean, the Bears were all consistently one of the best teams in the NFC. You know, when you looked at the, I guess that's the NFC North. the Bears and the Packers, I mean, they were always a very good team along with the Minnesota Vikings. Um, I mean, during that little era where Brett Favre was quarterback, the Minnesota Vikings were a very good team. The Bears were always a very good team. They were always, 10-6, 11-5, 12-4. Always had a very good defense with Lance Briggs and can't think of his name. What was the linebacker? White guy, Brian Urlacher. And then on the other side, you had Matt Forte, and at one point they had Brandon Marshall. But the thing that always bothered me about the Bears is that um, the offensive line was always horrible, and it always made Jay Cutler look really bad. Like, I mean, Jay Cutler was never, he was never a superstar quarterback, and he's never been perfect, and never has he ever been, you know, really a premier quarterback. He's always been an okay to average quarterback, right? But with that offensive line, the way as terrible as that offensive line has always been, I mean, how can you blame him for being just an average quarterback? And to me, how I understand it is that really hurt his confidence. Like the fact that he never had a really good offensive line, always had good defense. I mean, had good offensive weapons, but never was able to win a Super Bowl. Actually, went to the Super Bowl and then ended up losing to the Indianapolis Colts. Um, but or excuse me, I guess that was before Jay Cutler was quarterback. That was when Rex Grossman was quarterback. I'm sorry. Um, but I don't know. Like to me, that was like the fall of Jay Cutler as the quarterback of the Chicago Bears. I think had a lot to do with his confidence just being torn down because at some point I feel like he gave up and felt like that we're going to fix the offensive line problem. And as he's gotten older, I think his talent has diminished, and so he went from an average quarterback who could have succeeded and potentially done a little bit more with a better offensive line. Um, and so as he got older, like his talent diminished, and now instead of being just an average to okay quarterback that could have done something, he's now this really really bad team. One of the worst teams in the league last year. Now, on the other hand, I do think that, like I said, Jay Cutler had his flaws. He's not a perfect quarterback. Never was he ever a great quarterback. I do think that I don't want to say this. I think that be, I don't know how to say this. Jay Cutler was I really don't. I mean, he was a good quarterback. He did what he had to do with the bad offensive line, but was never able to really get the job done and do the ultimate thing, which is to win the Super Bowl. I think he may have went to one AFC Championship game, but I don't know. Jay Cutler is now looked at as this like bum of a quarterback who doesn't, may not even deserve to be a backup quarterback. And lost his job to, you know, a quarterback who has never been a starter. Really, he's been a perennial backup quarterback. So, I mean, it's an interesting situation. I mean, and I kind of went on a little bit of a tangent, but that's all to say. Do I really care whether or not Jay Cutler becomes, a reporter or a broadcaster? Not really. I mean, I've never really listened to him talk about sports or whatever. I don't know whether it's his passion or not. But I mean, he's a quarterback, so I imagine that he was in it as a broadcaster. But I mean, if that's what he wants to do and he feels that that's where he should be if he's not playing, then hey, go for it. I mean, I don't really care. It doesn't really affect me, but go for it.
Usually, I would say I don't care that Jay Cutler is becoming a broadcaster, but since that's what I want to do, I feel obligated to say I do care because this is just another thing, and maybe I'll write another article about this. I don't like the fact that and some of them deserve it, some of them don't. Looking at you, Charles Barkley. Uh, shots fired. Uh, um, I don't think that every athlete deserves to be a broadcaster of the sport that they play because some of them just aren't good at their jobs. You know, and I think that this is a troubling case. Everyone, I've heard people like Stephen A. Smith on shows say everybody thinks they can do their job, but they need to be a journalist for like 20 years and move up the ranks like them. But really, that's not the case anymore because it's surprising that I see people like him, I see people like Michael Smith and all of them, and that's because they had to spend 20 years. But I think that's something that they let go is the fact that these athletes just get to skip the line and come in. These athletes, these former coaches, um, people like Merrill Hodge and others who don't really give you good commentary, they get to just walk on in to the sports world and nobody says anything. Well, I'm going to be the first one to say this. Probably the first of many to say, I hate that you have the old guard on these TV cases saying you should wait 30 years or however long I had to wait to be on the sports day. But none of them say anything about these athletes that just waltz on in. And some of them ain't good at their jobs. But they get a check more money than Trey and I will ever see in their lives. They go from making more money than we'll ever see in our lives playing on a basketball court, a soccer field, in a hockey ring. Yeah, nobody that plays a sport and winning the broadcasting is safe from my shots right now, especially if you're not good at your job, right? That should not be because I find it very hypocritical that you have people like the Stephen A. Smiths and others of the world saying, "Wait your turn," when you got people like Charles Barkley who could just walk on in because of their names and their athletics. And I wish these companies would stop doing that. Now, I know Jay Cutler was the exception to the rule because he had to do a tryout first, but he was all but guaranteed John Lynch's job because he was a former athlete. And nobody, Trey pointed this out, he's talking to the media, but he's known as an unlikable guy in the media and on the football field, but he still got a job because he played a sport. And who would be better to talk about football than somebody that played it? Even though, as Trey just pointed out, he was a mediocre to okay people. And that's not to say that there aren't athletes that do a good job of doing what they do. Donovan McNabb is one. Ryan Clark. There are a lot of people that do a good job, but I'm sorry. The athletes that have strong opinions that just get to waltz in, ruin it for everybody. Because I don't think that you should just get a job. And, this may be oversimplifying it, but I don't think you should just get a job, basically, and you get to just skip the line where you have more deserving younger people who've done more work and had to go through internships, had to do a lot of different things to get where they are, had to write articles online, had to wait for opportunities just to get auditions at ESPN, at Fox Sports, at CBS Sports, and others. But people just get to waltz on in. And then if you're really good at your job, you can end up like Michael Strahan. And this is no shot to him because he does a darn good job too. But you can end up like Michael Strahan and end up in the big money block of Good Morning America and Live with Regis and Kelly. And this may sound bitter. I'm not bitter because I haven't made it to the lanes or the lives or seen the amount of checks that they signed on the court and in the broadcast booth. And I'm just tired of seeing people who I've listened to and don't feel like they do a good enough or adequate job, but have these same people that work for the same company they do get on TV and say, we appreciate you fans, but say you're late because you can't do our job when you got terrible sportscasters and you're saying that. Go ahead, Trey. I'm sorry. Hold on before you go, Trey. I didn't answer the question. My bad. I went on a tangent. Jay Cutler, I'm going along with Trey. An unlikable guy gets a job that involves likability. It is what it is. That's how it works. But I do care because it's just a long line of things that go unspoken that nobody really talks about. All right, go ahead, Trey. I'm sorry. Trey, I didn't hear you. You got anything to that?
No.
All right. Well, we're on the ESPN layoffs. So, unfortunately, speaking of ESPN, a lot of people lost their jobs. A lot of hardworking people. Not Mark Stein, but there was a college basketball writer who I think I really liked. Oh, Andy, what's his name? I want to say Andy House. That's the guy who runs PlayStation.
Andy Katz.
Andy Katz. Thank you. Andy Katz, lost his job. He was one of the few. Jason Stark lost his job. He's a guy that does baseball. A lot of people that lost their jobs, right? And because Disney and ESPN are moving to a more digital landscape, so they're getting rid of people who aren't, I guess, digital friendly. I don't work for ESPN, so I don't know what the rationale is. But from what I've heard and what I've read, that's the rationale. That's why they're getting rid of so many people. So go ahead, Trey. You got any thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, I'll take this from a business perspective. That's just part of having a job. Is that at any moment your employer can fire you. I don't know if ESPN is an at-will employer. I imagine that they are, just based on how this came out. So they have the ability to fire you at will, and that's just part of employment. You never know. You could work in one day and lose your job. And I think to a certain extent, some people do have a higher level of job security. But in this situation, I think it was something like 100 people that they fired all at once. I mean, and a lot of them were like Andy Katz. People. I can't think of his name. A guy who does he usually does college football analysis. But before he does like the college football analysis before the games on Saturdays. A number of guys throughout all of the major sports that have gotten fired, and it's like, okay, I wasn't necessarily attached to any of these people, emotionally or whatever the case may be, but it's like, oh, I'm not necessarily going to see them on ESPN at least, at least in the near future. Maybe they get rehired, or maybe they start something on their own, or they get hired somewhere else. But I mean, it's I don't know. It's part of employment. That at any moment you can be fired, and it's tough for them because now they have to go find another employment. But I imagine that most of the people who got fired probably had backup plans. They probably had some type of a degree in journalism, or some type of degree in that field, or a degree in another field that allows them to get another job, maybe in another field or whatever the case may be. So it's not something you don't wish unemployment on anybody. But I imagine that those people are able to find other jobs elsewhere, and if they're not, I hope that they do find employment to support their families, or if if they don't have a family necessarily, that they can support themselves.
Yeah, going along with what Trey said, excuse me, I agree with everything he said. A lot of these jobs now, you are hired to be fired. I mean, the only way that you are And by that I mean, I tell people all the time that you should be like the days of our parents way of life and employment are over, where you can stay 20 plus years at a company and get a pension and everything else. That's what I mean by hired to be fired. Like they hire you, and then maybe like the week or the next week, they're looking into your replacement because there's always somebody who could do your job better and is younger and is more hungry than you. So I tell people all the time that when you get hired or whatever, you should be looking for your next job or doing something to make yourself indisposable, right? Because most good workers, going from a more business perspective and going from what I've learned in my couple of years of working is you got to make yourself indisposable. Now, am I saying that, most of those people like the Andy Katzes of the world, the Danny Cannells, and the rest of them didn't make themselves indisposable? No, I'm not saying that. It's an unfortunate loss of jobs, so whoever loses their job, no one, as Trey said, nobody wishes unemployment on any of these people. Because, they got to live, they got families. And I'm sure that even if it was Sutton, I'm sure Fox Sports, CBS Sports, and others put a call in and said, yo, you want to come work for us. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see, because, Fox Sports has picked up a lot of, because I don't want to be disrespectful to Chris Broussard. Fox Sports has picked up a lot of ESPN's unwanted talent, I guess is a nice way of saying it, right? They picked up Chris Broussard, they picked up Shannon Sharp, they picked up a lot of the unwanted talent from ESPN, right? And so they're kind of ESPN like Fox Sports. That's what I call them, right? And so, so maybe there'll be a hiring increase at Fox Sports now, and CBS Sports and others. So these people will definitely have a job. It's just unfortunate that, the way we're moving now, the way we consume, and it's kind of just going the way people are consuming their sports and their media digitally. So you need digital avenues, and unfortunately, Andy Katz and the rest were just unfortunate victims of the digital age. I call it the Amazon age. I want it now and I want it immediately. A lot of people are losing to this Amazon, and it's unfortunate, probably unfortunate timing on ESPN's part that those firings happened last week, which coincidentally coincided with the fact that Amazon won a bid to, get eight games, 8 Thursday night football games, broadcast exclusively through Amazon. So it's very unfortunate that came out around the same time that ESPN was laying people off. I guess fortunate if you work for ESPN PR or communications, because, you had a cover of saying, yes, because of the digital age. That's why we're getting rid of all these people and stuff like that. So, it's unfortunate. And all these people, as I've said, are just unfortunate victims of the Amazon/digital revolution. Trey, you have anything to add, or should we just move on to the next topic?
No, I didn't have anything else to add.
All right, so to our last question, which is why I told Trey to hold off on the future Philadelphia stuff. Ed Rendell, the former Philadelphia mayor and former Pennsylvania governor, came out. Now he's a really big sports fan, and he's a broadcaster that does it right. He came out and said that the city and the state, but the city, are looking at, let me get the date right, 2026. So 9 years from now, mark your calendars, Trey. 9 years from now, the city and the state want to host a Super Bowl in February of 2026, and also that same year host an MLB All-Star game. So the question is, Trey, do you think Philly will land a Super Bowl and an MLB All-Star game in the same year?
Like I was talking about earlier, I think Philly is like. I mean, it's not like Philly. Philly is not like Delaware in the fact that like when I tell people I live in Delaware, people are like, "Oh, Delaware." Now Delaware is becoming a little bit more popular um, nowadays, yeah, because we have things like Firefly, and then because of Wilmington, people know a little bit more about Delaware. Um, but I mean, for Philly, like Philly, people like Philly. Like it's not like Philly is just this small city, somewhere in the middle of nowhere that people don't know about. I mean, people know about Philly. People know about Philly fans. People know about Philly sports. People know about the history of the city itself. And they know about the history of PA. Now they probably know a little bit more about the history of Philly more than history of the whole state. But can Philly have an MLB All Star game, and what was the other? It was the NBA. It was the NBA MLB All Star and the NBA All Star in the same year.
Nah, MLB and the Super Bowl. So
MLB All
that's
Star and the Super Bowl. Great, gotcha.
that's the country's 250th birthday in 9 years. So they want that. They want the Super Bowl, the All Star game. They
Right,
want the All Star game to be a part of the 250th year anniversary, and they want Philly to be designated as the party destination,
right,
which I wouldn't see why it wouldn't be, because it is where the country was founded. But they want both
right,
of those to kick that off. So
right. Hey, why can't it be in Delaware? Delaware's the first state. No, I'm just messing. Um, I could see that happening. I could definitely see that happening. Will it happen? I mean, who knows? It could be in, I don't know. It could be in Chicago for all we know. Um, Super Bowl could be in Chicago, and MLB All Star Game is somewhere in Texas or something like that. I don't know. But the MLB All Star Game is I'm not. When is the MLB All Star Game? If I'm not mistaken, the MLB All Star Game is towards the end of the summer. I think,
no,
right?
it's in July, like the third or fourth week.
July. Okay. Okay. So I was thinking about in terms of whether that would work or not. But as for the Super Bowl, I mean, I think the Super Bowl is actually a better reality um, for for Philly. Um, and now I would hope by that point maybe we have a Super Bowl in the next 9 years. But I mean, I think I mean, it's not unrealistic just because of the nature of Philadelphia, and you know clearly Philly is able to have events and you know have concerts and um, sporting events and other conventions and stuff, without any major issues. So I can't see a reason why that wouldn't happen, unless there's some other issues that we don't know about that come up or that could potentially be issues. I don't see an issue. I don't see why that wouldn't happen, and I would love to see a Super Bowl and an MLB All Star game in Philly in the same year, because I mean I think that would just be cool to see that happen. Um, and if the Super Bowl is in Philly, man, hey, I'm gonna have to put out some money for that, and hopefully the Eagles are in the Super Bowl that year, or by that point have won a Super Bowl, so we got some pride, when the Super Bowl is actually in our city.
Listen, man, I already said if they ever get a Super Bowl, it don't matter if the Eagles playing or not. Now it's going to be better if the Eagles are playing, but I don't care what's going on that day. I have to miss our Super Bowl fellowship at our church or whatever. I'm going to that Super Bowl when it's in Philadelphia. So, and hopefully the Eagles are in it because it's better when the Eagles are in it. But, even if they aren't, going. You got to go, man. Like, it's not often that things like that are in Philadelphia, and it's unfortunate that a lot of people have to say that. Excuse me. Uh, and It's unfortunate that a lot of people have to say that, but Philadelphia, as we said earlier, great sports town. There's a lot of stuff, and hopefully with the NFL draft, it will put us on the map, and hopefully we can get more events than just something that's 9 years away. Like I said, hopefully the draft can be a start, be here for the next 4 to 5 years. More people. I wouldn't be mad at an MLB All-Star game. Now, I'm not, and I don't think Trey is either. I watch baseball, but I'm not like an ardent, extreme baseball fan like, say, a Matt. Like, you guys haven't noticed, Matt is a huge baseball fan, and that's his sport. So, that's why it's unfortunate. I guess he couldn't be here today to talk about his sport. But, I wouldn't be mad if an MLB All-Star game came here. Like, I wouldn't be mad if both happened. I'd be so happy because, that would officially make Philadelphia on the map and stuff. And as I'm saying that, I'm not saying that Philadelphia is off the map, but, as a big international destination, if we get on that, I would be so excited and would finally tell me, even though I'm always, as somebody who grew up and say, I've always thought Philadelphia is the place to be, but it would make it so much better because, real Philadelphians will never admit this, but, we are seen as the little brother to New York and also the even littler brother to Boston. So a lot of people think of the East Coast, they think of New York and Boston and Philadelphia for the history and everything else. But New York and Boston get most of the love when it comes to events. I know we don't like admitting that, Trey, but, the truth has to be told. Like they are the big things for events. And I hate it that New York got the first Super Bowl on the East Coast and we didn't. Even though it wasn't technically in New York, it was New Jersey, but still. And I think that Philadelphia should get it. Philadelphia should get it before Boston and the New England Patriots. Philadelphia is where every big event should be. Super Bowls, Comic Cons, anything big needs to be in Philly, right? And so I'm so happy whether it's 9 years from now, whether it's 2 years from now. I hope the draft is a start and that, more things can come to Philadelphia. Unless Trey has anything to add, we can wrap this show up right now.
No, sorry, I am finished.
Okay, cool. So yeah, guys, just like last week we did wrap up on a Friday night, but this is we are finished in French. We're finished. Definitely want to thank you guys for coming out. I want to thank Jeff and Trey for rocking out with me today. Congratulations on order to the Brown family. We definitely send a big congrats for the crossover family. It is a great experience. It's great hanging out with these guys and listening to them talk about sports, politics, and other things as we dive into these things. I really hope you enjoy it. Like we said, hopefully we'll be in the same location more, but if not, maybe we'll do like once a month a video podcast. Maybe. I have to talk to Trey and anybody else, but maybe we'll do a video podcast once a month or something. But have a great weekend. Thank you all for tuning in, whether you tune in now or later. Thank you for tuning in. Have a great weekend. Deuces.